hey, don't touch that again or I'm going to shut this whole thing down. I was like, for who?
That's not wrong.
Cool. What are we doing? You start because this is your idea.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've got like 11 podcasts in the bag right now. We got so much shit recorded pre-release, so we're just gonna do some filler episodes, and you're not gonna know. We're not gonna say what episode this is because we don't even know what episode this is.
Yeah, we don't know.
But, you and I have just been calling each other every now and again just because quarantine sucks. And, we strike up some interesting conversations, and I think sometimes we just got to be like, you know what, we're gonna record this because it's funny.
Because we're interesting dudes.
Yeah. So we were just talking about how, I work a regular job. Caleb, you work a regular job.
Yeah.
The most musicians will work regular jobs. So, but we all use the band thing as like our advantage. When we work at a regular job, like you got all these regular people that work every day. Like all they do is just go to work. But then you got these undercover musician motherfuckers that show up at the workplace, and then you can just you can be like, hey, I played this gig, and it brightens up everyone's day at work, right? They're like, oh, tell us about this time that you were at the bar and like what crazy shit happened,
Yeah.
So we all use it as a scapegoat, right?
And it's like, and generally I think like we're our generation, because like most of like our generation isn't like super into like rock bands and stuff, but then like everybody that I work with, I always find is like, oh no way, like what kind of band are you in? And I'm like, oh, like I'm singing this like alternative rock band, like Queens of the Stone Age or like Alice in Chains, and then like, oh, like no fucking way, man.
Yeah, they lose their mind. They're like, you're in a rock, you like Black Sabbath, and you're like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, I love that shit, and like the heavier the better with like these fucking.
For sure.
You work like a landscaping job, and I work a factory job, right?
Yeah.
So we get all these metalheads all the time. And like even if you just say like, yeah, I'm in like a rock band, they're just like, oh fuck yeah, I was in a rock band once.
Yeah.
Almost every time.
Yeah. Well, I was just telling you about my supervisor who like loves metal music, like has shit cranked all the time. And so when I was working sales like a few months ago, we're like they're like fucking. I'm not gonna bore you with the details of this fucking place, but like the others people like bagging seed, and then they would call me and two other guys that. Either like winter as salesmen and then do the other shitty work as a summer to come over and just like lift bags of seed or whatever. So we're over there and my boss is there and I'm like, hey man, I was like, my band we just put out a new single. And he's like, oh no way, really? And then and I always love this, man. You're like, yeah, we put out a single. And then like, no way, is it on Spotify? I'm like, yeah, dude, it's fucking everywhere. Like, of course it is.
Yeah, of course it's on Spotify.
Yeah. So I tell him, and then, that's what I go over and he's like, Caleb, he's like, you should see this, my fucking office, man. Like, he's like, I got like a sound system in there now. And I'm like, oh, no way. And then I tell him about the single. So then, this is like also just like a portable. So like a quarter of it is like his office and then like the tech office. And then behind that is like kind of another section of the company where there's just like women in there. So I tell him about the single, and then he goes in there, and he fucking cranks this shit to like 11, and then I just hear the song
with just
start.
all the regular working people,
yeah, man.
all the ladies
and then
working in the office.
I'm like slugging fucking seed bags in and out of this office, and then like just through the walls, it's fucking vibrant because like that song's
you just
pretty
hear Lost Arts
bassy
playing.
too, and it's like it's equal parts like cool and then super embarrassing because nobody in like the office, like none of the women know that that's me. But like,
they're just like, why is this song playing way too loud? Why is this song
so fucking loud? Yeah, but it was also kind of cool that he checked it out or whatever. But
oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the main one is like you deal with these super fans almost that are coworkers.
Yeah,
right. Like I've worked in like car dealerships and like industrial jobs. And almost every time you'll get those metalheads too, for sure. Like I've had a couple ones that are like, man, I love this shit. I love breakdowns and like fucking. I used to mosh to Pantera and shit. And you're like, dude, that's sick. Like I want to just hear about that. My band's way less interesting than going to a Pantera show. Are you kidding?
Yeah, for sure.
But then there will be people that are like, yo, you got your songs on Spotify? I'll listen to that. And then like the next day you come in, they're like, man, I listened to all your music last night on repeat and like fucking it's great. And you're like, oh man, like thanks so much. Yeah. But then like that's like all they want to talk about. Like you'll come into work and like you might even be dealing with some shit at work, like fucking whatever, like Stacy's giving you some shit or whatever. And then this guy will come up and be like, so what's new with the band? And it's like, oh man, I love this question almost all the time. But like, I'm dealing with some work shit right now. Like, what am I supposed to, it's like, like when that mix, like the wall is broken down between your day job and like your night job or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's nice that, you can kind of have that, but.
Or you're dealing with some band shit, and it's like, and you're like not stoked on the band at the moment for like whatever multitude of reasons, and they're like, "Hey man, how's the fucking band going?" And you're like, "Yeah, dude, it's fucking good." and then
for
like,
sure,
but
everything's great.
You're like, our fucking
another day in paradise.
You're just like, whatever the issue was from like the weeks preceding that, and they haven't been resolved yet.
Yeah.
You're just like, actually, the last thing I want to talk about right now is how we fucking write songs. I don't really want to talk about that.
Right now. That's the intimate questions. Yeah. So like, how do you like you get those very seldom.
Oh yeah.
When you're like a working musician, but like when you get them, like they can be temperamental questions. It can be like a loaded question.
For sure.
Like you'll get someone that sometimes when someone like literally does not even like comprehend what a bass guitar is,
right?
Or like fucking what going into the studio is, and then they're just like, so like, how do you write your lyrics? And like they catch me on a bad day, like I don't even want to answer that. I'd like lyrics come from an emotional place. So did like all instruments, right?
Yeah.
And then someone will catch you on a bad day. They'll be like, so like, what does this song mean? It's like, fuck you. That's what that song means. I don't want to. Oh my God. Like, sometimes it'll take you to that bad place, or they'll catch you on a bad day. You don't even want to explain your instrument all of a sudden.
Oh,
or you're on like that down day where you can't play guitar right.
Yeah.
And then you show up and they're like, yeah, you're such a great guitar player. It's like, fucking no, I'm not.
Yeah. Like, all of the songs are about how fucking cripplingly sad I am. That's what they're about.
Yeah, how shit I am at everything and how nothing's going right.
Yeah, how much I hate myself and how I have to work this shitty job.
Right. but then they give you this, like, it's like such a double-edged sword, right? Because like they'll ask you this question and like deep down, not even deep down, like overall, I really appreciate that they're taking interest in me as like as their coworker, and I mean really as their friend at work.
Yeah.
And then they'll start asking you questions about your music, and it's like it's such a like you try not to bring home into work and work into home.
Yeah.
And then they'll ask you about the band, and like you do appreciate it, but it's hard to talk about sometimes because I've been in countless bands, and sometimes you're in the middle of a band breakup.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember working at a car dealership. I won't say which one. I was a mechanic, and mechanics can be pretty ruthless. Factory workers can be pretty ruthless, and like you always try to remember that they're just busting your balls to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you'll be like, oh, yeah, like the band broke up and I don't have a band right now. And they'll just be like, oh, this guy doesn't have a fucking band. Yeah, fucking, it's like they try to like make fun of you or whatever. And it's like, oh, that actually really hurts.
Yeah.
Like, way more than you know.
Like it's actually all I've ever wanted. And now it's slipped out of my hands. So that's fucking cool.
Right. And then someone will come up that doesn't even know. They'll be like, how's music going? You're like, it's going really good.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. It's like, yeah, music's going really great, guys.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope sometimes. And it's like,
but I mean, overall, it's good. Like I feel like when we were first talking about this off air, it's you use it as kind of a supplement. You can kind of coast through work sometimes as a musician, where people get really stoked that you're in a band, and it brings light to their day at work. And I mean, it brings way more light. Oh, Jesus, sorry, I lost my headphones. It brings way more delight to us as musicians for someone that takes interest in what we're doing.
Oh, for sure, yeah, because mostly people don't give a shit. And like, I always feel weird when you're like when I start a new job and stuff, because like any reason I would need any time off is almost always for like the band, and I'm always like, are they gonna see this as like a legitimate reason to like take a day off or like leave early or whatever? Mm-hmm. But I've never really run. Most people think it's fucking really cool.
Yeah, of course, you can get away with murder almost as a musician. Like I had one boss when I was working at a print shop. And like these are all very specific examples. If anyone knows me, they know exactly what place I was talking about. But
Yeah.
I mean, you want to try to keep work away from music, you know. But I was working at this print shop, and my boss, like my head boss, the owner of the place, was really into the band, like the band.
Right.
And so anytime, like, I could get away with murder at that place. He'd be like, so what's going on with your group? You know, like, you playing any gigs? And I was basically like a hired gun with the band that I was playing with at that point. And he really loved that. I told him that at one point. I was like, yeah, you know, I mean, I've done that for lots of groups where you'll play just as the bass player.
Right.
You know, you're not really in the band. So you'll be like, yeah, I was just kind of playing this gig for some cash, and, you know, we did this, and this was great, and I got this much money for the gig. And he'll be like, man, that's sick. You know, Levon Helm used to, you know, and he'll go into this whole spiel, and then I don't have to work for 25 minutes while he tells me the story about the band.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I had a boss that when he finally found out, it was funny because he found out like so late that he was my favorite supervisor of all time, and he was a little loopy, and he found it like late in the year that I was like played music and stuff. This is when I was still in Meaford, so I wasn't necessarily in a band. But then he was like, no way, man, you play music? It's like, yeah, dude. And then he was like, I love Neil Young. I was like, yeah. And then he would just fucking talk to me forever about Neil Young. He's like, you ever fucking watch, I just go on YouTube, man, and look up Neil Young. And he's like, it's wild, the stuff that's on there. Like, yeah, Greg, for sure, man. For sure.
Yeah. Well, that's how I got into the band. You know, it's that kind of shit. I mean, like, you try not, like, when someone says, like, oh, yeah, you like music? Well, I just love David Wilcox. You know, like, you take that with a grain of salt. But, I mean, with these coworkers that you're spending so much time with, I mean, like, especially with my boss, the band that I was playing with at the time was super into the band too, right? So it was like, okay, well, I'll get into them and I'll learn a couple songs. I'll learn a bit about this group. And then, like, if you go to a coworker that, like, doesn't play music and you're like, yeah, man, you were talking about Pink Floyd the other day? I learned how to play Money on the bass. And they're just like, oh, really? You know, like, they lose their mind. It's like, it's such a magical thing. I mean, that goes with anybody, right? If they say, I'm really into this group, and it's like, oh, well, I learned one of their songs for you.
Yeah.
You know, because you told me to. It makes their day at work, you know, and it makes your day at work so much easier.
Oh, for sure. I don't know if you get this exact experience because, like, you're, like, already a pretty outgoing guy. But, like, I'm more, like, laid back and reserved at, like, work and stuff for the most part.
Right.
And so I always find, like, the contrast funny that, like, people, they'll, like, work with me and then they'll, like, come to the show and then they'll be like, oh, yeah, man, like, you're fucking, you're way different on stage than you are day to day.
Well,
and I'm like, well, yeah. I was like, that's also, I mean, I've never said that, but I've been like, that's all I want to ever do is what you saw on Friday night.
Exactly. That's all I want to
be here right now. So this is my move for right now.
Yeah, this is how I actually am. It's good that you can see this.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to work here for fucking like 10 hours a day. So this is like,
oh, man.
This is how
Have you ever been told by a coworker that they think that you're a lifer? Have you ever heard that term?
No, and I think I would immediately quit that job if somebody told me.
Oh, dude, it's literally like, so anyone that's listening, if you've ever seen Office Space, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But, like, it's like when someone comes up and says, like, oh, it seems like someone has a case of the Mondays. Yeah. You know? That's the shit. It's like I remember there was a coworker, we were actually very good friends. Like, we started as coworkers, and we became very close friends. I think it mostly started because I needed a ride to work, you know? And then, like, when you have that carpool experience with someone that you work with, I don't know if very many people do. I've done it for ages. Like, and I've been the one that drives and picks up two people to go to work, or I've been the person that takes rides, you know, and wind up carpooling with a bunch of people going to work. It makes you become friends really fast, you know? And I mean, especially if you do shit outside of work too. But we were friends, and then I think I was doing my regular star sets. Like, I was playing at a bar 2 days out of the week, every week for a year at that point. And I might have been between bands or something. And then he said, like, you're going to work here forever. You're a lifer. He said that to me once. And I hadn't wanted to quit my job so fast in my entire life. Not like, oh my God, someone tells you that you're going to you're going to do this for the rest of your life. That's my cue to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. Well, man, like I got in
as
this,
a musician.
I got in this panic, and actually, I'm still actually kind of in it because, so it's funny because like I'm not saying like where I work, but I mean, and I don't even necessarily mean this as like it's not necessarily like a shot at the place. So like I started at this company that I'm at now when I was in school doing like sales part time, which I'm not very good at, but it's a very easy job. You fucking show up.
It is a very easy job. Pretty much anyone can get it.
You dial the phone all day and fucking whatever. And so like I did it for like part time for a couple months, but they were like, "Oh, and I've been like doing lawn care in various respects for the past like 4 years now. At different
and I have also done. I did spray and aerating, so I've done 2.
Well, like I started
jobs.
cutting grass in Meaford, and then I moved here for school, and I got a job with these like 2 guys cutting grass for 2 summers, and then I came to the company that I'm at now doing sales, and then they're like, "Oh, well, do you want to hop in and doing the tech work in the summer?" And it was like way more money. And I was like, well, because, again, I wasn't very good at sales. Because basically, like, the sales job where you get, like, an hourly base pay, and then it's, like, you get commission based off of what you sell or whatever. So, like, and then, like, the commission is, like, an hourly raise, basically, based on how much you sell. So
right, yeah.
So like, yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. So anyway, so I worked like the whole summer into the fall, and then they call me near the end. There's like 2 weeks left on the road, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to like jump back in the sales office? You know, we'll do sales until like first week of December. You know, then there's like a 6-week layoff, and then you're back or whatever." And I was like, let me think about it. And I was just like, man, like fuck no, I don't want to do that. And then I was like talking to my mom, and she's like, well, you might as well like do it. It's like a month, Caleb. It's like 5 weeks. You might as well do it, and then you have 6 weeks to look for. I'm like, okay, you're right. It's not that bad. And like most of the people in the sales office are like pretty cool, and it's like a very small room, and especially like that last month before Christmas, dude, the shift was fucking 10 to 6:30. You go in, and like there's like a dial quota for the day, so you like make your dial quota, and like time of the year is like super fucking easy because you're just calling people that are already customers and basically just being like, hey, do you want it again? And most of the time they're like,
renewal calls,
sure. Or they're like, no, fuck off. And you're like, all right, cool, let's talk to you later. So like it was super easy to make the money. So like I made a fuckload of money in that not a fuckload, but I made like a decent amount of money in that month or like 5 weeks or whatever. And then it was like kind of fun because you could just kind of like talk shit with everybody in between. Right. And then I got laid off for 6 weeks, and then like nobody's hiring in January. So I passively looked for work, started back in the sales again, and I was like, okay, I need to look for other work. And then this fucking pandemic happened, and then they were like, you want to start up in the lawns again? And I was like, well, I'm like, fucking guess. So now I just have this like panic where I'm like, I do not want to get stuck in this loop where I just go like sales to lawn. So I'm like, I need to find something else. I think
that kind of brings us to a deeper topic with being like a working person, like being in the working world as a musician, right? Where it's hard to find. I mean, being a touring, like if you're single mothers or fucking the Dirty Nil or something like that, like I can only imagine what their work situation is like. I know there's one musician that I know, and I'll keep the name of the band and the person anonymous, but it's they work in like a touring band. You know, I mean, the pandemic aside, right? Like this is the actual working
if everything was
musician
normal
world aside, where they work like a pretty reliable. It's still like a kind of music person job. They work at like a record store,
right?
Or or work at a venue or whatever, and but they still work this touring musician job, and it's hard to find like their setup. This is the ideal situation, I think, for any working musician, where they work at like a music venue or a record store. So when they say, hey, I'm going on tour for 2 months, it's super flexible,
right?
And it's never a problem. Like they encourage it, so it's for musicians, it's so hard to find that employment where you can make a livable amount of money, work a good amount of hours whenever you want, basically, and then also have flexibility to make the band work, like practices, tours, going in to record. Sometimes you need to set like several days just to record a song.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, when I started working in car dealerships, working as a mechanic, I thought that was the ticket. You know, having a mechanic's license and being able to work at any dealership sounded like the golden ticket.
Right.
But then after a while, it kind of you figure out that you can't just kind of come and go whenever you want. You know, you got this toolbox. There's cars that need to be worked on. And then I switched to the factory life, and factory life seems to work okay for me too. But I mean, you work in lawn care. I used to do that too when I was in high school or just out of high school and being like first trying to start being in a working band, and that works okay too. You know, it's anything that you can kind of make your own hours. But it brings an interesting point. Like, what's the perfect musician employment? You know, like what's the best job for a musician to work?
Right. And the other thing too, man, is it's like, and I've had this concern kind of followed too, where like, I like am like comfortable, with my like living situation and stuff, and like with the amount of money I bring in and everything, where like, and I want to find like, I've been looking for like audio jobs and stuff that like, you know, because I also fucking went to school and shit, but like I also
exactly.
like don't
something
really
that's in
have,
my field.
I don't really have like an interest in like working in like a studio or something, because like something that I found in MIA was like, I want to work on my music. I don't necessarily want to work on other people's music.
I've never thought that I would be in it. Like, I didn't go to school for music. I thought about it a lot, but I knew even from the very beginning, like I didn't want to be an engineer recording other bands.
Yeah, but like I think that like I could do like I like, you know, like editing like this podcast and stuff like that. Like I would like to get into shit like that even.
And thank God for the fact that you have that. Because, I mean, then we wouldn't have this podcast.
Right. Well, but the point I was trying to make, not to fucking brag about my living situation, but my point was
I'm super thankful for that.
I like living in London, and a lot of jobs are in Toronto, which is where I don't have any interest in fucking living in Toronto. And then to just
I
my
like
previous,
it there, but I don't think I could live there either.
My previous point too is like, it's not all that cheap to live in London, but in comparison to moving to Toronto, it'd be like, I have
mental.
to live in like, I mean, even just setting aside the like uprooting your like entire life. Like, I don't really know many people in Toronto. Like, everybody that I fucking love lives in London for the most part. And and then it's like, I would get a much smaller apartment, you know, with Julia and pay probably like double what I pay here. And just be like, and know where to park my car.
That's just,
then,
that's more
I'm
like a
still hunting
Toronto
for
thing.
A job, you know what I mean? Well, that's what I'm saying, and it's like, so that's the other tough thing. And then like the audio jobs and stuff are like just not really in London, you know. So it's just trying to find something that isn't like causing you
for the audio
anxiety.
field for sure.
Well, it's and like I was like talking to my mom the other day, and we've just been like pitching ideas back and forth and stuff about like what to kind of look for. And she was saying that too. She's like, you can't have a job, even if like, she's like, you got to find something, even if it's like, you don't have to find a forever job, but you got to find something that doesn't
freelance,
that doesn't like cause you fucking anxiety every morning when you wake up and be like, I can't fucking, I don't want to go there. I can't. Like, I was waking up at like, I'd wake like right up at like 3 a.m. and then all I would think about is like what I need to do at work that day to get home as fast as possible. And then I'm like,
and you don't want a job like that.
That's fucking ridiculous. Because then like also, man, like it ruins the like my whole day. Then I'm not even just like enjoying being alive. And then I'm like,
for sure.
And then I get home, and then it's like I get home and I have like my night, and it's awful. And then it's awful, and then you end up not accomplishing anything anyway. So it's like all day I'm like, dude, I can't even fucking play guitar or fucking whatever, edit this podcast or like do the stuff I want. And then I come home and then you don't do it. And then you're like, see this fucking job. And you're like, no, just fucking, you need to,
and,
you know,
and within 10 hours, you got to go back.
Exactly.
Right. It's like, I've got a tack on for that. My dad, which I don't know if he listens. I don't know if he's going to listen to this podcast. He's been watching the videos, but this is going to be an audio only. We've been to break the third wall, we're going to try to make some more audio ones. So if you like just having this audio shit, make sure you follow. Check all that shit out.
Please.
Make sure you follow on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. But anyway, back to what we were saying. My dad, he worked a job that he hated. He's retired now, but he worked like his main job for like 25 years or some crazy shit. He hated it, you know? And I mean, I've always chased trying to find a job that I could tolerate. Because, I mean, like, you and me, we're the exact same way, and I assume that most people that listen to this are musicians. We just want to play music.
Yeah.
That's all we want to do. We don't want to fucking deliver pizzas. We don't want to work on cars. We don't want to fucking sell T-shirts. We want to be musicians, right? So you got to find this job that you can tolerate. And, I mean, like, musicians are nervous people, anxious people, angry people, trying to work some fucking job that is aggravating to begin with. Like, normal people can barely work these jobs.
Yeah.
We aren't built to work these jobs. You know? So my dad, he worked
I have dainty hands, people. I can't just be fucking...
exactly. Like, fucking, why should I be working this fucking high stress job when I'm a musician? You know, like, we're temperamental people already. But my dad worked like a very stressful job. I won't like, he was in the industrial field. Right. Like, almost like government level, weird shit, you know?
Oh, Jesus.
And it was stressful for him. It was very stressful for him. He had to travel a lot. It was really shitty. And I remember one day, this was well after I decided that I wasn't going to try to work a stressful job. Like, very early on, I was like, I'm a musician. I'm going to try to just focus on doing my music and making enough money to survive. Frugality is a very prominent word in my vocabulary. I think being frugal is a good thing as a musician.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of them
he worked this job,
are bad at that.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'll let you, but we'll finish this.
Go ahead.
He worked this job he really hated, and one day he told me, because he had started seeing a social worker because he was so stressed from work.
Right.
And he said, I was talking to my social worker, and I said, you know, one day I was sitting out in the pool, which, you know, he doesn't make a small amount of money. He works a stressful job, and he makes a lot of money at the time, right? So he was sitting in the pool, and a thunderstorm started up. Like, it started raining, and he's sitting in the pool, and he was telling his social worker, you know, I saw the thunderstorm roll in, and I thought, you know, if I were to get hit by a bolt of lightning right now, at least I wouldn't have to go back to work tomorrow. You know, and that thought haunts me to this day.
Dude, that just gave me
Can
chills,
you imagine
man.
hating what you do every day for like 10 hours a day to the point where, like, if you got struck by lightning, you'd be thankful that you didn't have to go back in. Like, fuck that, dude. Yeah. Just to fucking, I mean, like, and he wasn't even doing, he was doing that job to provide for a family, right? Yeah. So that's a pretty big thing. But it's like, I'm just trying to fucking work a job so I can go out and play a gig at Call the Office on Friday.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to fucking put myself through hell just to be able to sustain. Like, fuck that. So I've always been a firm believer that, like, you work a job that you can tolerate at the most. You know, like, you should try to do something that you like to do because, I mean, what's the point? And I mean, like, yeah, you're sustaining yourself and you're sustaining the people that you love or whatever, but why subject yourself to that?
Absolutely.
You know, fuck that.
I was saying the other day because my brother's a pharmacist and is just, I think, like, my brother would be like a professional student if he could be, which makes us just exact opposites. But, like, I'm also jealous of that too because, like, there was, like, never really a question that, like, that's what he was gonna do. And it's fucking a lot of work. It's like 7 years of school to be a pharmacist. It's a lot of fucking work. And the job itself is very taxing and it's long hours and it's a lot. But he enjoys it and he fucking because he likes interacting with, like, the public and he likes fucking learning shit. Like, if you have a question for him and he doesn't know the answer, he'd be like, I don't know. And then in fucking 4 hours he'll be like, I've learned everything I need to know about the thing that you asked me.
It itches him.
And it's like I'm like also jealous of that because it's like I also wish I just wanted to be a fucking lawyer and I just could go and do that and like you know what I mean, because then it's like then you just go and you get a fucking job as a lawyer and I mean I'm sure it's not that easy, but you know what I'm saying, like you like have the path set
past
out
the bar
where it's like what do you want to do, so and like I want to be in a band and it's like okay what do? I don't know, you find some friends and then you make a band and then all
yeah,
four,
but
all
I mean,
four of you are
I think you're
poor.
selling yourself short. I think you're selling yourself short because I mean, being in a band isn't that easy either.
Oh, it's not.
You know,
for sure it's not.
you've got to be a good musician, like as yourself to begin with.
I think
to make a band that's going to sustain. But anyway, sorry.
I
digressing.
think my point in that is that my brother has a house and like a dog and a girlfriend, and
right.
I mean, I think like. I'm not trying to also paint that his life is perfect either, but my point is that like he went to school for 7 years, and he has he has a career now, and like there's no question of that. Where like now it's like, okay, you're done school, yeah. What are you doing? Lawn care, and then trying to make the band work, you know, and also like that's cool, and I love doing that shit. But it is also kind of frustrating because there's another part of me, which I think is just the way that I was raised and like grew up. Where I'm also like, I just kind of fucking want a normal life also. But then every time I say that, there's those like,
and a wife and
there's those voices in the back of your head that are like, no, motherfucker, like,
fuck all that.
Yeah,
you're going to do something different.
You also don't want all that. And like, I don't even want for a lot. Like, I don't necessarily like have a need for a house or whatever. Like, I'm happy with my living situation right now. Like, I'm not dying to like get out of this apartment or whatever. Like, I like it here.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think it'd be a little worse if I was like, I want to fucking get married and have kids soon and fucking, that'd be a whole different conversation.
Back to fucking the work thing. I've got a coworker that, you know, he's the farthest thing from a musician worker, right? Where he's looking for a job that he's going to work for 30 years and he's going to retire and all that shit. But he's only a couple years older than me, right? So he's like right in the middle of it. So when we like I carpool with him, right? So I was talking about the carpool thing. Mm-hmm. We carpool together. So in the mornings and when we get off work, all he ever wants to talk about is eventually I'm going to get married and I'm looking at houses right now and I got to do car payments and blah blah blah. And like as a musician, personally, I don't know if this is a shared musician thing, but I mean from a very early age I knew that I was going to have to live very frugally. Mm-hmm. As a musician. And I came to terms with the fact that sometimes, you know, I'm going to have to do this by myself. Yeah. You know, I might not be able to sustain a relationship or I'm not going to have a nice car or I'm not going to be able to have a house anytime very soon. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to hear those things sometimes where someone's like, yeah, you know, I've got a kid and I'm getting married next year and I've got this house that I just bought two summers ago and blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, like I couldn't even possibly think about owning a house or even buying a house, having a car until I'm 35. Yeah. You know, like that's where I'm at because it's like, you know, either I'm going to make it or I don't. But when I don't make it, I'm going to give up when I'm like 40. You know, like fucking when I couldn't possibly try any harder, then maybe I'll try to fucking settle down. But I'm just like, as a musician, it's real. That's one of those struggles. Like when you're working these jobs, you're trying to find a job that sustains your dream first. Yeah. You're not really thinking about the long term of like I'm going to settle down. I'm going to give my girlfriend a really nice rock on a ring. Yeah. And I'm going to have 2 kids and a white picket fence. It's like Jesus. Sorry, I had a guitar topple over on me just now. But but you don't think about those things. You think more about how am I going to make my dream work? And I think that's a very shared thought from all these musicians.
Well, and it's tough. Like we know, you know, people. I mean, I'm thinking of like one friend in particular. You might know other guys who, like, I always say, and like it's been said just within like my friend group or whatever. Like, I feel very lucky to be with Julia, who is also, you know, a photographer and has similar kind of goals.
Yeah,
right?
someone that shares similar interests.
And we know people who are dating people with like quote unquote like real jobs, you know, who don't necessarily even comprehend the fact that like music is the intention and the dream. And like having those friends, like especially, you know, having like working relationships with those friends is like I don't want to say, I don't use the wrong word. I'll say interesting, because it is kind of like, for your friend's sake, you want to be like, man, like, I know that this is what you want. And then there's like that, there's those like polarizing like pulls of like, yeah, but like I've put a lot of time into this relationship, but also I want to fucking just do music. And it's a lot of like, but they want kids and a house and everything, and you want to fucking, you know, whatever it is.
I've had a really tough time talking to people like that sometimes, you know, especially when I know I'll do a variant of this rant. I've had this rant many times where you run into someone that you haven't seen in a really long time, and they're like, oh man, what have you been up to? And you'll be like, oh, you know, I've worked like 1 million jobs. I've been in 1 million bands, and I'm still trying to make it. You know, I'm still just trying to be a musician. What have you been up to? And then they give you the most structured, like solid storyline you've ever heard in your life. It's like, oh, well, I found the love of my life, and I'm married, and I've got 2 kids, and I just bought my first house, and I've got a car. And you're like, fuck me. Like, you really wish that you could have that security almost. But at the same time, like, they're the ones that are like, wow, that's really sick that you're still going for it. You're still going to be the thing that you dreamed about being in high school. And you're like, yeah, fucking whatever, all right? You know, it's like, it's so hard for them because they'll always tell you, you know, keep going. You're doing great. I see all your shit on Facebook. Yeah. You know, but it's like, yeah,
oh,
but
really,
I see
Mark?
your shit.
You don't fucking like it.
I see your shit. Well, right, yeah. You don't fucking buy the album, you know? But I mean, that's a whole other thing. It's more like, yeah, but I see your shit on Facebook, you know? And you've got 2 kids and a nice car, and you've got a house, and you're the same age as me. We graduated the same year. Yeah. You know, I mean, but our dreams are different. So it's so hard sometimes when you want to, like, you really like this person and you're trying to confide in each other about what you've been up to, and you're proud of the things that you've done, or maybe you're regretting some of the things that you've done, and you're talking to them like, yeah, I'm this musician, and, you know, I've been working a lot of jobs, and it's been really tough, but I'm still going. And they're just like, yeah, well, I've got 2 kids and a white picket fence and a nice car, but it's really hard, and I'm still going. And it's really, like, I'm sure on both ends it's the same deal where we want what the other person has, but we're not regretting the things that we've done.
No. Well, I was talking to like another buddy of ours, and just about band stuff and how it can just be really fucking draining sometimes. And like I don't know if you've had moments of just like, yeah, maybe I'll just fucking quit doing this, and I'll go down that path.
I really don't think I have. I don't think I have. I've had, and I mean, like, I'm sure it's the same way for you, but I mean, when that's a good kind of subtopic where, like, musicians that have those defeating moments, you know, like, as a musician, I feel like most people don't ever give up completely, you know, but when you have those defeating moments, it's sometimes you realize, sometimes it's harder than others, these realizations where what you're doing right now musically isn't the way that you should be going in your career path. And it's really tough, you know. I mean, everyone has that, I'm sure. But it's so tough where you realize, you know, this isn't going to be the band that makes it. And you're on the upswing in the band. And I mean, this is me, who I've been in like 5 bands, 6 bands that I thought every time when we first started this band it was going to make it. Right. And then you realize partway through, like, this isn't the one for me. You know? Like, say you're the bassist in the Rolling Stones, and you think this isn't the band for me, and then you drop out, and then all of a sudden they become the biggest band ever. Doesn't mean that they would have been the biggest band ever with you in it. Right. Maybe they would have collapsed when you were in it. Right. Or, you know, it's just it's so tough. I mean, I guess in any career field. Anyway, I'm digressing too much.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I think, like, for the most part, I would probably generalize and say it's sometimes a pretty common thing to be like, man, I don't know if I should quit doing this or whatever. But what I told this guy was, like, I've been there before, but then I always ask myself, okay, you're gonna quit, so now what? Like, what do you do now? And then I never have an answer for that, because the answer to that question is like, well, I don't actually want to fucking quit. I want to do this.
There's nothing else I really want to do.
And what I said to him was, I was like, if you can ever answer the now what, like, if you say, okay, I'm going to quit, now what, and you have an answer for the question, then quit and go do that thing. Because
so, you know what?
Why beat yourself up?
Yeah. I'm gonna cut it off there, and I'm gonna leave this as as our audio only poll for everyone on Instagram, because we're going to make a little audio only thing for here. But this podcast has all been about working people as musicians. And I wonder, as a musician, if you weren't to do music, what would you do? You know, if music wasn't an option as a musician, what would you do as a job? Would you even want to work?
No, I don't want to work now.
An interesting question for people.
I don't want to work now.
Yeah, I mean, fucking as a musician, I just want to work on music all the time. But I mean, it's just not sustainable being a person. You know, it almost throws me back. I remember being in philosophy class, and people would talk about these philosophers. They came up with the question like, you know, what is it to be, or some shit like that. It's like, what fucking job were they working? They can't just sit on a stool. You can't just sit on a stool in the middle of your living room and just ponder thoughts and make money.
Yeah.
So what were these people doing to sustain themselves? And I mean, thank God that they probably starved a bit. They took some sacrifices to ask these questions, but they persevered. You know, some people fucking rough it really hard to be musicians just to be able to do it. And sometimes they make things that are really great, and sometimes they don't really do much of anything at all. And you just kind of have to pray that you're one of those people that does something.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, we laid some pretty serious topics down on this one, but you know, I'd like to hear what other people think. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, if you're watching the video with a still screen on YouTube, we'd like to hear your thoughts. If you're an artist, if you weren't an artist, if you had to give up art for whatever reason, what would you do? What else would you do with your life?
What else would you do?
Professionally, personally, what else would you do?
Nothing.
But
Podcast.
Nothing at all. I don't know. Maybe I'd fucking get real good at pool and go to bars all the time. Who knows? That's what I would do. I'd become a hustler.
Dude, I'd get really good at snooker.
I'd get real good at snooker, buy a motorcycle, and live in Arizona. That's what I'd do. Buy a trailer.
I think I've told this.
I'd become Bud from Kill Bill. That's what I'd become.
I don't know if I've ever told this story on. It's just a quick little uncle dig. I don't think I've ever said it on a podcast. So my grandparents have a pool table in their basement. So with like family gatherings or whatever, I always rip some pool. And my one uncle, who was the middle child, this is like my dad's brother, who's the middle child, was just like literally like textbook middle child growing up. Like literally like any fucking stereotype of a middle child was my uncle. And he fucking, so the thing was always like, yeah, Brad would fucking take the bus into town in the morning, and then he'd just like fuck off to the bar and like play pool or whatever. So you play my uncle in pool, and he would just like destroy you, but then brag about it. So he'd be like, oh, fucking better luck next time, Caleb. And I'd be like,
right.
I'd be like, yeah, well,
good thing that we didn't bet $10 on the game.
No, I would be like, yeah, well, you know, I have my grade 12, so whatever. Like, oh, fuck off. Like you can be better at pool. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Well, I'll tell lots of pool stories on the next podcast where I'll talk about some Star Billiards stories. That'll be our cliffhanger for this episode.
Nice. All right. Well, fucking see everybody later then.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Like, subscribe, check out We Should Jam Sometime everywhere. Later.
Everywhere. Bye.